In this lesson, we're going to be covering how to read sheet music. Now, this is going to be super basic. I'm not going to go very in depth, and I'm going to have to be quick. So if you need to, pause the video and let some of this soak in as we move forward. But what we see here is what we call staff paper. We have here just a bunch of open bars, and these two symbols we see here within the staff paper represent basically your right hand and your left hand. So this backwards S symbol is called the treble clef, and that's going to represent the right hand on the piano when you're playing. This little backwards C looking character, whatever you would call it, is called the bass clef down here, and that's going to represent the left hand. Now, these bars are simply going to be the spaces in which the notes exist, so you can write your own music or simply read the music that's already written for you. So let's look at the placement of these notes. So you'll notice there's a big space between the right hand and the left hand. Right in the middle there, if there were to be a bar that goes across here, that is what we would consider where middle C is on the keyboard. So you will see middle C being written as simply a note with a line going through it, representing if another bar existed down, that's where middle C would be on the keyboard. So the space between C and the first line is going to be the note for D. You already know these notes. You're just walking up the keyboard on the diatonic scale, playing the white notes, and these bubbles represent those notes. We just continue to go up the scale from C to D. The first line is going to be E. So D falls between C and E, so it falls in this little space down below here. The bottom line of the staff is going to be E. The first little space there is going to be F. Then the next line is going to be G, and then A, then B, then C, and so on and so forth until we get up to the top line. Now, these notes do continue because as you play these on the keyboard, it's not going to stop at F up there. It's going to continue to go on up to the top keys of the piano. So if a note existed up here in this space above the top line, that would be the G note. It just continues to go on up, and you'll see that in more advanced music. Now that's the right hand basically, starting with middle C and going up to the top line of the staff paper. Now going down towards the left hand, we do the same thing. We're just counting backwards alphabetically because of the notes the way they're configured on the piano. So as we go down from middle C, we play a B, and that's going to be that little space above the top line. The top line itself on the bass clef is going to be the A note. Then the G note will be in that little space. Then the F, then the E, D, C, B, A, and G. So now you know the placement of where the notes are on sheet music. A lot of people learn little acronyms to learn where these letters land on these spaces and lines. You can come up with your own, but one of the ones I remember as a kid on the treble clef anyway is the bottom line is E, the next one is G, B, D, and F, and we came up with a saying of every good boy does fine. And that kind of helped us remember what note goes on which line. Same thing with the spaces. We have here F, A, C, E, so that spells face. So you could maybe associate some type of a saying to go along with the letters that fall within the bubbles. I'll leave that up to you, but that's a common thing where people try to remember where these notes fall on these staff lines. But that's just going to be getting used to it and learning where these exist. I will point one thing out that may be helpful. Like on the guitar, the string 1 and string 6 are both the E string. And then you have the B string, and then the G string, and then the D string, and then the A string. These are not exactly the same configuration, but you can learn some patterns. Like on a guitar, the top and the bottom string are both E. Not the case in piano, but I will point out that E is the bottom line and the top space. So that is kind of an association. Same thing with the F. The F is the first space and the top line. Same thing going down. A is the top line. It's also the bottom space. G is the top space, and it's also the bottom line. B is the second line from the bottom and also the space above the top line. So if that helps in some way, that might help you remember where some of these notes are. But the main thing is know where middle C is and be able to walk either up or down these bars and these lines to figure out where the rest of the notes go. Now you may be wondering, what about the sharps and flats? Because those aren't noted on sheet music. They are noted in the sense that there's given symbols here. So we have a symbol, and this stands for a sharp note. So you'll simply see the G placed on the second line like normal. But if you see a sharp symbol beside it, it means you're going to go up a half a step and play that black note on the keyboard. Same thing as if it were a flat note. So if you see a flat beside the note, you'll know to go down a half a step. You'll also see these sharps and flats over here in the key signature. And that will tell you what key you're playing in on the piano. So that's an indicator as well. And this is true for all the notes. So if you ever see a sharp or a flat symbol, either in the key signature or next to the note itself, you'll know to go a half step either up or down, depending on if it's sharp or flat. Also, within sheet music, you will see a time signature. Now, what this means is we have 4 beats between the first line and the end of what we call the first measure. So every little space broken up with these vertical lines are called measures. So 4/4 time means that there's 4 beats, and every note gets one of those beats. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you start a new measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's simply a way to help you keep time and know how long to play the notes. So let's look at that for just a second. If you see an open oval or an open note, there is not shaded in black, that means it's a whole note. It gets all 4 beats. So if we played that, we would hold that note down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then let up. So it takes up the whole measure if it's a whole note. You'll also see the same note configuration, but you'll see these vertical staff bars coming up off one side or down sometimes, depending on where it is on the lines. But if it's going up, this means it's a half note. So in order to fill up the 4 beats for this measure, you would have to play 2 notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you would play that note twice. Each one would take up 2 beats of the measure. So this with the vertical staff means it is a half note. It takes up 2 beats. This will take another 2 beats. Now, if you see the same note that's colored in black, that means it's a quarter note. And it also has a staff note or a staff line going up. So in order to fill up this measure of 4 beats, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4. So you would play that note 4 times with the beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's look at another example here, and let's see some different variations of notes that you may see as you're playing reading sheet music. So this again would be a quarter note. So that means it takes one of the 4 beats. There's 4 beats in the measure. So if there's 1 beat consumed by a note, it is a quarter of the whole. So it's simply getting 1 beat called a quarter note. Now, if we add a little flag on this, what it means is it cuts that time in half, and it's considered to be an 1/8 note. It's just basic fractions at this point. So without the flag, it is considered a quarter note. With the flag, it's considered an 1/8 note, which means you will have 8 of them within the 4 beat measure. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It would be 8 of them that takes up the whole measure of the 4/4 timing. All right, let's take this one step further, and now here we see an 1/8 note because it's a vertical staff and it has a flag on it, which means it's an 1/8 note, not a quarter note. Now, if we add another flag to that, it means it cuts it in half again. So instead of being an 1/8 note, it's going to be a 1/16 note. And since we're still in a 4/4 timing of the measure, it means it would take 16 of these to make up the full 4 beats of the measure with 16 notes. And that's why these are called 16th notes. All right, so make sure you catch part 2 of this lesson. Down below, you'll find the next video that finishes out this lesson on reading sheet music.